Hey guys, Jennifer Daly of Cheering on Moms here. So excited today. We are talking about teaching our kids about money with Kimberly Amici, who should be joining us any second now. I hope you've been following along in the Mom Wins series. What I am trying to do is provide you with some quick mom wins. We're busy women, we have a lot going on. We need some mom wins in some different categories of our lives. So let's bring her on. All right. You know, I can almost talk and do this at the same time. Almost. I almost have it figured out, friends. Just hang in there with me a little bit longer. All right. There she is.
Hello. I'm like trying to adjust everything. Like, how do I
I
sit?
know. It puts you in like weird square, and like most of the time that my forehead's cut off or whatever. So this time I'm like, I scoot way back.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. Thanks for joining today.
Yeah.
So I want to jump into kind of tell us a little bit about your background. I know you're passionate about teaching moms and people about teaching our kids how about money. So tell us a little bit about your background there and why that's important to you.
Yeah. So, like when I growing up, I learned certain things about money, but I had a lack of money. I went without a lot of things. Like I always wished I had the cool clothes and the cool things that everybody else had. And when I went to college, that was no different. Like it was a big struggle. Like it was all we could do. I got tons of financial aid that made it possible for me to go to college. And, but I had no like money beyond that. Like I went to school with no money and everything I bought was on credit and, those high rate credit cards that just get you into trouble. And so there was a need there, but there was also a foolishness on my part. And I bought tons of things that I didn't need.
Right?
That I
Yes.
just wanted because I had this free money, right?
Yeah.
So I graduated from college with a lot of debt, student loan debt, but also consumer debt. And it was just a real struggle for me in those first couple of years out of college. And I thankfully read this book that sort of just helped me realize it's possible to get out of debt. And I just started taking ownership of my choices, and I made hard choices and said no to lots of things. And I managed to work my way out of debt and just create better spending habits. So thankfully, I met my husband who was on the same page with me. He's like, I don't carry debt. I don't want to carry debt. This is not what we're going to do, except for our home.
Right.
And so I just got fired up about money. Like I love to talk about money. Like I don't think it should be off limits. I mean, I think we should talk about how we're spending and what we're doing with it. And then having children, I wanted them to like have good money habits. Like there was less about like having more money and using what we had wisely. And so when they were little, I got on this journey of like, how do I teach them these good habits? How do I set a precedent so that they won't have to make the same mistakes that I made?
Yeah, awesome. So good. So I bet there's a lot of moms out there like me, and you probably started this way where it's that we have the desire to teach our kids about money, and we've got the basics. We teach them this is money, this is what we do with it, we save some of it, this is credit, this is, and so we have the basics here, but I think you'd agree with me, there's so much more strategy and there's more to it.
Yeah.
So how do we start winning in this category? What do we need to do?
So I have older kids right now, so I can tell you what I've done as they were toddlers, as they were like in the middle, and now as teenagers, what we do with them. So from my story, when I had my daughter, we had money that I didn't have growing up. Like I could get her things that she wanted, and what I found was that I had no compass or no way to figure out what should I buy for her and what should I not get for her? What should I say no to and what should I buy her because I can? And my mom couldn't do this for me. And and so for me, that big aha moment was saying, oh, I have to make some decisions ahead of time, because if I keep emotionally spending and spending because I can on her, like, what am I teaching her? And also when my second and my third kid came along, it was like, do I have to buy one for everybody? Like, do I have to say yes to all of them? And then I was finding also that, like, if you were the good kid, I'd say yes to you. But if you were bugging me that day, I'd be like, you're not getting anything. I'm not
Yeah.
buying anything. Like, and I was like, that's not healthy either. And so as a mom of young kids, I decided that I was going to decide, what am I going to spend? What are they going to have to buy for themselves? And I know you're like, oh my gosh, they're, babies. Like, what do you mean? What are they going to buy for themselves? But at a very young age, I would say when my oldest was about 4 or 5, I made a list. I was like, here's what mommy and daddy will buy for you. Here's when we'll buy it, right? Like, so if there's a birthday or a holiday, like, keep those things in mind. They're coming up, they're coming around the corner. I didn't have to buy them everything when they wanted it, right?
Yes.
So it wasn't like I was choosing not to spend any money on them. But what I started to do with them, and this was a mom win, is that I started to give them $1 a week. So at the ages of like, I probably started it when they were like 2, to be honest, like 2, 4, and 6.
Uh-huh.
I would give them $1, and I would give them it in dimes. And I had a pie
Oh.
chart, and I showed them on the pie chart, like everything, let's say in blue was the 80% that you keep. And then there was, like red was the 10% that we tithed to church. And then another 10% was what we saved. And I created these buckets for them with stickers on it that showed them a picture of what we were doing. And every week, because I wanted to, I'm big on creating culture, right? Just like a payday, every week I wanted them to get those 10 dimes, and we put them on the pieces of the pie, and then we put them in the bucket. And so from a very young age, I started to show them that this is something that we just do every week. And not only did we made a big deal, of course, we went to church, we made a big deal about making sure those dimes would go into the bucket at church. We also, we had the piggy bank picture on the other jar with the savings. But then as they accumulated money to spend, I actually took them out on purpose to spend the money. Like I actually taught them how to spend. So we would go to the dollar store, and maybe they only had, $2. Well, that means, you have to have more than $2, right? Because of the tax. That meant you could only buy 2 things. So that even that continual practice of going and spending money is just as valuable as teaching them how to save their money. So we would go, and they would have to make hard decisions. And even at a young age, I started to see them be really thoughtful about what they were spending their money on, because all of a sudden they didn't want everything. Like when you make them choose, they have to really think like, oh, like, do I really want this? And right. Another thing I saw as they started getting older, and I think at some point maybe I was giving them $2, but as they were getting, like birthday money, or we do chores around the house as a part of like living here, but I would
we too.
Yeah, I would do a commission board. So if you wanted to do something above and beyond and you wanted to make $2, you could do this for mommy. Like trying to also teach them. Basically what I love to do is duplicate real life scenarios. So like,
it's good.
If you want to make some money, you have to do some extra work. If you want to, like, how do we do this? So as they would make more money, and as they would accumulate the money, I would actually see, and this is not something I prompted, but we would go to Target and they would bring their money, and I would see my 2 girls start negotiating with each other. Well, if we both chip in, we can share this.
Yeah.
Like it was like they started to realize how they could make their money go further.
Yes.
But they were also more willing to share because they valued the money that they had. They knew it meant something, and they knew it cost them something to spend that money. And they knew that if they wanted it, they had to be able to work with their sibling. And so that was sort of a beautiful thing that came out of it that I had not foreseen or intended for it to happen. But they really started to take money seriously, even at a young age, which was fantastic. It was so amazing.
I love the coin idea, because that gets them in routine, like you said, of this is what we do with our money. And then it's physical. They get to see it. They get to manage it. They get to know it's not just a plastic card.
Yeah.
So I love that idea. And then when you're talking about a commission, we do that here as far as there's chores because you're part of the family. This is what you do to help out and pitch in. And then if you want to earn money, you can do these extra projects. But I love that you use the word commission, because that is a real life word. So getting them used to that over and above, this is what you do. I just love that idea. there was something big that Zoe, my 10-year-old, my oldest, wanted to do this summer. And Daniel and I had talked about it and decided that we weren't going to do it. And we kind of broke the news to her yesterday, and it was a massive expense. And we just told her, we've been very cognizant. I don't ever want to say we don't have the money for this. I try to give her or teach them that it's not that we don't, it's that it's how we choose to spend what we have. And we're choosing not to do this with our family because this would just be about you, and it would take over our summer vacation and yada yada yada. So kind of tell us mentality wise, there's the physical side of money, and then there's how we think of it as parents and how we translate that to our children. Kind of teach us the mentality. How do we need to be thinking about money so that when we do speak about it to our kids, that we teach them in a loving, serving way, and not oh, we're poor, we can't do this kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Like I've been very mindful to say, not to say we can't afford something, but to say that's not how we're going to choose to spend our money.
Yeah.
And also the language around the idea of we're stewarding the gifts that God's given us. We're stewarding, we're stewards of this. We're managing this money. Phrases like we want to be wise with our money. We want to make right choices. And then even, as the kids got older, we would clean their room, right? And they would get rid of like their little kid stuff or whatever it was that we were in the room. And they were giving away things that they had paid for, that we walked through the process with. And so even just having conversations, go back to, remember when you thought you had to have this, like, there was like these really big head dolls that were like stuffed animals that were popular for a while. And so they got a ton of them, and like we gave them away, and just reminding them again, like, remember when you thought you had to have all those, and then you got rid of them because you outgrew them. So maybe let's think about, like, do you need to have 10 of them? Do you need to collect them? Or do you need one of them? So always bringing that conversation back to like the mindfulness of how you're using your money. You don't want to be doing things because you're caught up in the moment or you're just going with the flow. You want to make wise choices with your money so that you can make really amazing choices in the future when opportunities come up. And so
definitely
always talking about money and how we're choosing to use it and why we're choosing to use it that way is so important. I mean, even when it comes to like us going out to dinner, like we're like, no, we're not going to spend that money. Like, even if they don't need to know that's our train of thought or why we're thinking the way we're doing, we're making it part of the conversation, especially if as they get older, they start to ask why. Like, where are we?
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you were saying about just kind of them realizing what they're spending their money on. I had lunch with a friend a couple of days ago, and she has two girls, and one is 18 and one is 16. And she was talking about how the 18-year-old had saved up, and so for a car. And so when she turned 16, she was able to get a good car. And then how her 16-year-old, her one that just turned 16, hadn't worked to save that money, and so she wasn't able to get a car that she really wanted or even close. And so I brought that information home to my kids, and my girl's 10 and 7. I'm like, this is, you have to save up. This is what happens. There's a real life example. I said, you can choose to save your money now or blow it on candy. Because I had one recently that like took her money and said, this is what I want to do. And she went and bought a bunch of candy. I know that's not wise, but that was her choice to do with her money. So I like how you were talking about them actually seeing those examples and actually seeing what they can do with the money. So Kimberly, any last tips for us as moms, wins in the teaching our kids about money area? What else do we need to do or think to make this work?
Yeah. So one thing I want to say is, as your kids grow, the system needs to change. So what worked in the beginning has to work with like who they're becoming and what they're capable of doing. And so as my kids got older, I do want to say the whole spending the candy on the thing.
Yeah.
As my kids got older, I started to hand over more and more of the money that we would typically spend on them for them to manage. So
Ah,
middle school looked different than high school. When my kids hit 13, I give them all the money that I'm going to spend on them in a year. It goes in a bank account. It's their responsibility to manage it. It's their
oh,
responsibility
nice.
to go to the bank each month, take it, put it into their cash envelopes, and that's what they use. And so we've adapted the system because I want my kids to make all of those mistakes while they're still in my house.
Yes.
You said with the candy, like it's okay if they are blowing all their money. It's okay for them to go through an experience where they don't have the money that they want for the thing they want
Yeah.
because they didn't make a good choice. And for us as mom to not look at that as like a mistake, or you should have done this, or look, you went and blew it. But hey, what did we learn from this? Like, allow them to make these mistakes while they're in our home. My oldest is about to go to college, and she has been managing the money for the last 4 years. I mean, before that, because we've had different, like I said, phases of what I allow certain ages to be responsible for. Things like their clothing budgets, their entertainment budgets, their gift budgets, and so like she's had the opportunity to make mistakes. She knows what it's like to spend and not have what she needs. She knows what it's like to save and miss out on something because she didn't want to spend the money because she was too scared to spend the money. Like, she's been through it all. There's not to say she's not going to make mistakes, but allow them to make mistakes. Let the system adapt as they get older. Think about what it is that you want to teach them, and then adapt a system that will allow them to learn that lesson, but then also allow them to make mistakes. Like,
Hmm.
don't prevent them from making the wrong choice, because we want them to learn. We want them to learn while they're in our home, where there's the repercussions aren't disastrous or like life
Yeah.
changing or ruining our credit or us getting kicked out in the street.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the coin idea. I think we're going to have to implement that here. I think we're definitely at that stage. So that's great. Thank you so, so much. If people want to follow you or get in touch with you, kind of share with us how they can do that.
So you can find me at buildyourbestfamily.com, and then I also write at kimberlyamici.com, and I'm on Instagram as Kimberly Amici, and also as at Build Your Best Family.
Perfect. I'll drop those links below here in a little bit. But thank you so much,
Oh, you're
Kimberly, and
welcome.
we'll talk to you soon. Thanks,
Okay,
everybody, for joining.
thanks.
Bye.
Bye.